first time in my life I'm truly free to see the clear-cut forest for the poison sea, to see the waters occupy the shores of Jersey, and I feel alive.
That was beautiful. I synced them up at exactly the same time. Now I don't need to sync them up. All right, so hi, my name is Eris. Welcome back to Calfire Crackpots. Today we're going to be getting into an actually good part of climate change, which is new engineering.
Yeah,
So-
actually, positive interactions with the environment. It's hard to
yeah,
believe,
absolutely.
considering only a few episodes we were talking about moving the moon's orbit.
Yeah, did that guy die recently? I don't know.
Ah,
like-
man, I hope so.
Republican state legislature members like file in and out so quickly, like it's hard to even keep track.
Yeah, it's half the
It's
time
like,
they
we
die in
just
a term,
voted
and the
in
other
this-
half the time they stay for like 40 years.
Oh yeah, it's stupid. All right. I'm feeling a little under the weather. Perhaps I got COVID for the second time in 3 months.
That's unfortunate,
More
but
likely, it's just a cold.
when the seasonal depression turns into regular depression,
No, I think it's over. It's over. We've done it.
we've finally done it.
I think we can put another Chicago winter in the history books today on March 13th, year of our Lord 2022, when we have let me just check the weather, a week of sustained 60 plus temperatures.
I
That is
think,
good.
hmm,
But we're going to get 2 foot of snow in like 3 weeks for a day.
I'm still holding out for the unexpected foot of snow that always happens this time of year.
The whiplash was this week, but like there's going to be one more fuck you before it's over.
Yeah.
Because last week was just cold.
Oh my god, last week sucked. Just too much stuff.
It was. Yeah, we are in our exclusive coverage of Countdown to Spring Break. We have 2 more weeks.
Yeah.
All right, how are you today?
Doing good. Oh,
All right,
man.
I am good at the christening of the first D-Day invasion of the local bike shop, which I work at, where today it was the busiest it's been in over a year. There were 40 people in the store at one time, and you've been in the store, it's
That's
not that big.
small. Yeah, the store is
Yeah,
incredibly small.
Because
And most of it's like
this family and their like army of children, like there were at least 8 of them. I don't know if there were like 2 families and they were babysitting, or they just had like a billion kids. But like there were some parents and 8 kids came in, ended up buying 6 bikes. So we're trying to test ride all of them, make sure they're doing well, and at the same time, people just pile in. I don't know why everyone decides to come to the bike shop at the same time every day.
it must be something to do with like, oh, I don't want to be a
Quantum.
bother. I'll just come like when they're not busy.
Yeah,
And then
I mean, we
everyone
open
does it.
at 12, but everyone thought we opened at 3:30 because that's when people actually came in.
Yeah.
All right. So I got some pictures up here on the intro slides. I really like this picture, the one with the guy on the tracks.
Oh yeah.
Subreddit
Oof.
called r/subway creatures is where I got most of these photos that are going to be on this presentation.
I did check that out the other day when you told me about it. It's
Yeah,
just an incredible
unfortunately,
subreddit.
there's like some actually funny images, but like it's a lot more like people just shooting up
Yeah.
and other things. But like, anyway, we got news, and the news is that apparently Ukraine has weapons of mass destruction.
Oof.
So we're doing a little bit of a whiplash back in time here to when French fries were called freedom fries. And a country that like a powerful country has an economic interest in invading now apparently magically has weapons of mass destruction.
Hmm.
So what is Putin claiming?
What is Putin claiming? I haven't been keeping up with the news recently because I've officially
So-
stopped caring.
It's like that Onion article where it's American Dream declared dead today as last man stops believing it. It was like some man in like Toledo, Ohio, who was like, watching
I'm gonna
TV.
rise up in the classes. I'm gonna become a business owner.
Yeah, and he was like watching TV and it was 12 and it was noon and he had put on pants and then he was like and then news van started rolling up to my house and was asking me questions and apparently I was the very last person who believed in the American dream. Now he's dead. It was good. It was very good. The Onion YouTube is highly underrated.
There's some
My
really good ones.
my absolute favorite is our standardized tests biased against students who don't give a shit.
Oh yeah.
Studies have shown that students who fill in their answer bubbles to look like the UFC fighting logo score significantly lower on their standardized tests.
Yeah.
These kids don't have any role models. They've just been shown pictures of people who are motivated.
Yeah.
And it's schools need to prepare kids for the real world, and in the real world, people don't give a shit.
I gotta watch it again.
I love the Onion. I love the Onion so much. So Russia may have inadvertently screwed over its biggest industry, which is oil, by pulling the stunt because America cut off all of its oil imports to Russia. And as you can see, that's not really that big of a deal for Russia. It makes up a very small percentage, but it's a bit of the writing on the wall for the rest of Europe, which is an extremely high importer of Russian oil. And heading into the summer, I can foresee a dramatic curtailing in Russian oil imports by Germany and France and this, that, and the other. But at the end of the day, it's like this could be huge. In terms
It could be
of
the final straw on the camel's back that makes people say, all right, now it's officially financially viable to choose the alternative energy options.
oh yeah, and you know, like the US is just fast tracking offshore wind turbine projects right now. Like normally, especially on the East Coast and West both coasts, it's a big problem with homeowners associations saying, but you can't save the world, otherwise my ocean view will be disrupted slightly. But those projects have been fast tracked over the last couple months since the Biden administration came in. Same thing with Europe. Europe's investigating a lot of clean energy alternatives in the last few weeks. This would have been the most interesting way for it to happen, but what I foresee, at least in America, is energy becoming the main hot button issue for the next year or so. Gas prices right now are insane. There's no
Yeah.
like, haha, why are you complaining? It's just a couple of dollars. No, at this point, like it's crossed into the territory of it for a lot of people. It is a genuine financial strain to get to work, especially if you have to commute pretty far for your job. It's just not sustainable to take a car anymore. And in Canada, it's even worse. Like people's paychecks are being and raises that they might have gotten just being erased by the cost of fuel.
Yeah, I think long term it promotes some interesting benefits, especially the idea of what if we end up like passing legislature around this? What if we end up supporting alternative means? But short term it's the issue of, all right, well, not everyone has an electric car, not everyone has public transport readily available to them, so we have to do the best we can with the given means, which is we have to find some way to get cheap fuel into the cars of American people.
Yeah, short term, what I see happening, and what I hope happens, is that there is a large increase in domestic oil production in America, such that gas prices can go down, energy markets can stabilize, and we might be able to export using Venezuela or places outside of the Middle East or Russia to help fill that market. And then as oil becomes more of an unstable asset, um, it slowly becomes phased out through green energy, renewable energy, this, that, and the other. But in the short term, domestic oil production needs to increase.
Yeah,
There's no way
there's no
around
way
it.
around it.
I don't. It's at this point where we are now in history. Oil is essential for every American. I don't care who you are. And with oil scarcity and energy prices the way they are now, there's really no other option. At this point, the time for green energy was 10 years ago. Maybe 10 years ago, if we would have done it differently, this would have been an easier transition. But no, the cards are always and have always been in our hands. Um, just when the longer we wait to play them, the harder it becomes to play them. So if we're starting to play it now, it's going to be harder than it was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And this is ultimately a good thing, especially given that the U.S. wasn't giving any oil to Russia and is now helping give it to Europe. And the United States is Europe's third largest energy supplier, second largest outside of Europe, excluding Russia. It raises a lot of good points that the U.S. given that the U.S. has a large amount of oil reserves within its borders that have yet to be used. The U.S. could help Europe and itself wane off of Russian and thus oil energy.
Yeah, it's an interesting idea. That I don't really have anything to add to that. It's just a really interesting idea that those prospects are going to be in our future.
Yeah, we're living in interesting times, and if I'm gonna be honest, I'm a little bit sick of it, but it gives us more cannon fodder for our news slides. So
Yeah.
there we go. So what is public transport?
It's very convenient. It is very weird. And it's a great way to get around town.
So for those of you who don't know, Chicago gets so cold in the winter that we have to light our train tracks on fire so they don't crack and die. This was back in our polar vortex during the last El Nino year in 2019. We had a negative 60-degree wind chill. We didn't have school for 3 days because the gas lines in buses froze.
Yeah, that was a crazy
And
time.
dude, that was so weird. That was like when you could actually throw like stuff outside and it would freeze. I did the ramen noodle thing where you'd put the ramen noodle thing up and it'd freeze in like a few seconds. That was insane.
Crazy.
Like I heard of a fair amount of people who literally just said fuck it, locked up their house and like drove to Florida. I
Dude, I
mean,
would I would be worried about doing that. I would feel like a pipe would burst.
I mean, yeah, it's like we did the Texas deep freeze except 90 degrees colder.
Yeah.
Oh my god, that was crazy, but it still has gotten really really cold this winter. We had a week of negative wind chills. So they had to do this again. So it's kind of just switch heaters, but it looks metal as hell to have a train just going off on tracks that are on fire.
Yeah.
So cool. So yeah, we love public transportation. It's cool. But we're not really going to be talking about public transportation. We're going to be talking about trains. So trains are good, cars are bad. I
Yeah.
love how this photo of the most congested highway, second most congested highway in America is Chicago's very own 94 interchange.
Oh, we hate it. It's
Yeah, so
such an awful road to drive.
this is 290, and then this is the interchange that goes to 94 and 90, so via O'Hare. It's just nuts. Like rush hour, like that's where people get shot. That's where people waste much of their lives in. And taking the train, which is what we're going to be talking about today, is between 2 and 3 times less carbon intensive than driving. And
Hmm.
given that this graph, which needs a union on this podcast because we use it so much, 16% of all greenhouse gas emissions in the world come from transportation. So curtailing that is an absolutely imperative part of the fight against climate change. So,
Yeah.
and then you should take the train because, well, it's, safer. This is death per billion passenger miles. Car, it's 7.3. Train, it's about 0.43. So you're less likely to die. I love how any incident of a train crash gets covered to death.
It's how to describe it.
It's news. Like a plane crash does too, but like, you know, 18 first graders get killed by like some guy in a Hummer and like, you know,
I think the
that's barely
reason
that's like eighth page news.
it sounds counterintuitive, but I think the reason it gets covered is because it's such a spectacle. Like, oh, a
Yeah,
plane fell out of the
like
sky. Watch that. Instead of like, oh yeah,
look at that.
like 100
Like
car
these
crashes have
are
happened since the last time that happened, but like, do you care? No, you know what a
like
car crash is. You don't know what a plane crash is.
look at the title slide. Like look at those videos of pictures of trains crashing. Like Jesus Christ, it's a train car that's as big as a house is overturned or off the tracks. Like it's crazy, but like it's safer and when you're on a train you can do other stuff while you're on the train. If you're sitting in traffic, you're just sitting in traffic. You can't really do anything else besides listen to music. You're kind of just stuck there. Trains, you go to the city faster and you're doing shit along the way. It's a good time overall. And I think there's a big stigma in America against people who take public transport as being poor. Like there's something liberating about being in a car, but there's nothing liberating about wasting hours of your life in traffic.
Yeah.
I don't
I
know. I've
think
never understood that stigma.
waste I think traffic is necessary no matter where you go, but like I don't know. I at least personally enjoy being in my car sometimes just cuz I like the music, but then just like bring headphones.
Yeah, it's like
I acknowledge there's no good reason to like commute in a car unless
absolutely.
you live outside of public transport.
Yeah, I've taken the train to school before. It's so funny because it's like a 2-minute train ride and you don't have to pay for a ticket because they won't catch you.
Really?
Well, no, like you only really need to have a ticket if you're like taking it to the city. Even
Hmm.
then, not really, because like for context, I live one train stop away on the like uh commuter rail system from my school, and it's it's like a 30-second train ride. So you can easily like stay by the door and no one's going to ask you anything.
Hmm. Yeah, I
Um
mean, I would probably do that when it's cold, but anytime warmer, that you could probably bike faster than the train in that situation.
I can bike faster than driving actually.
That makes sense. Not getting
Yeah.
caught at certain lights, not getting caught up in certain areas of like, oh,
Oh yeah.
there's a dead end here, there's no outlet. I can just like get off my bike and hop it over the curb.
All right. So let's talk about Chicago's very own light rail and commuter rail system. So it's bad. It's terrible. Like their Chicago's version of the subway, which is just a subway except it's above ground. Um, okay, so let's say I live in Jefferson Park, and my job is in Cicero. I have to
Yep.
take the train all the way to the loop, and then all the way to the other blue line, and there's no direct route. It all just goes into the center of Chicago and then goes out. There's no connecting lines between anything.
I
And
think if
the
they made
same,
like one orbiting network,
oh
like
yeah, like halfway, like from I don't know, Loyola going Belmont, Cicero, Oak Park, um, Archer, Garfield Park, like, and then make that like a big beefy line, like that would make the CTA like an actually good thing. Because when it comes down to it, it's all just focusing around one block, um, Wells, Lake, Wabash, and Van Buren, and it's so dumb because it's just so crowded, and especially when you're in that one block, that's like all stockbrokers. Like it's not like where people live.
yeah. I mean, I'm glad it's not where people live because
Oh
there's
yeah.
trains flooding through it nonstop, but
And
ugh.
then Chicago's commuter rail system is good. It's okay, and I think that's all it really deserves. It's meant to have this kind of spoke structure because people its unapologetic purpose is to get people in and out of the city. It's not helping you get from one suburb to a different suburb. It's you're getting into and out of the city with it. And I think it does that fairly well. It has a
Yeah.
very robust schedule. It's easy to buy a ticket. The tickets are very cheap. It's cool, but at the end of
If
the day,
you
it's
I think if you overlaid a map of all the major roads and like all the highways and all the interstates that pass through and around Chicago over the commuter rail system, you'd notice that a lot of the highways go from suburb to suburb and through areas like that. But there's only
yeah,
really
because
two or three major highways that go into the city.
well,
And
that's
yeah.
next. Um, so hold on, I'm just gonna skip 2 slides to talk about this. This works better. So the interstates in Chicago. So you have 294, which is kind of at the edge of the very populated part of Chicagoland, and then 355, which is getting more into the exurbs, and the laser pointer. And the only really highways to get into the city are 94, 290, 55, and 94. Just kind of coming from orbiting around. So it's very similar to the metro train structure. But one problem is if you look at who owns the metro lines, it's Union Pacific, Canadian National, BNSF. Metro doesn't own any track. Metro will pay BNSF to operate on their track a very large sum of money every time they do. And because of that, BNSF or whoever gives their trains prevalence over Metro. So that's why you can have a train show up an hour late. That's why an Amtrak train can show up like 4 hours late. Like it's just they don't own their track, so they don't get a say in when they go. Like they're lucky they can go. And another example of this is Caltrain, so the Bay Area's version of Metro. And there's really only one line. It's connecting the two urban centers of San Francisco and San Jose. And Caltrain owns that track. It's not used for freight. They're the only people that use it. And that actually is done fairly well. If you look at two cities kind of midway between, um, they have a very good train schedule almost every 10 minutes in the morning. And part of that helps to make people make the ultimate good decision, which is taking the train over driving. You can have a job that starts at 11 or you can have a job that starts at 6, and I can drive whenever I want, but I'm at the mercy of a train schedule. So the more a train schedule can work for you, the more people are going to take the train.
Yeah.
Um, and then going back, because I should have put them the other way. So then this is intercity light rail. So European cities do this very well. American cities do it very poorly. So this is what the Paris underground map looks like. It doesn't make sense. It's jumbles of tracks everywhere. It's crossing over, zigzagging, going every which way. That's how it should go. Like I've been in Paris before. It is easy to get across town. Like it is frighteningly easy. Same thing with London. Like, let's say I start here, get on this train, interchange here, and interchange here, just wait on the train. It
Yeah.
takes like a half hour, like if
The
it's not
trains in
rush hour.
London were incredibly fast, incredibly reliable. There were so many of them, and there were surprisingly few stops on a lot of the routes, like because there were
Mhm.
just so many different dedicated routes to different suburbs.
Yeah, and they can move fast too because they're not on an elevated train. I've never understood. I'm sure there's history behind it, but I don't know why Chicago just can't tunnel. Like, there's no. th-
It sounds like
eh,
some weird World's Fair thing where like people got sold on the idea that their trains had to be above ground so they could see the technology of the future.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know if Chicago has some type of like big soil problem that makes tunneling impractical.
I know technically we're on swampland, although I don't know how much of Chicago is actually like that.
I'm gonna look it up.
And on top of that, um, what is it? The bedrock in some places is incredibly high, so that might be prohibitive to actually, building an underground train system.
Um, hold on. So Chicago has enough room for an above ground train. That's not really a reason. All right, history stack exchange. I think it has to do with the whole raising of Chicago thing because it used to be steam trains on here, so they're very old. I think it had to do with Chicago didn't have a sewer system until like the early 1900s, and the whole prospect of raising all of that up and doing a subway line at the same time, I think, was just too much for racist city planners to handle.
Yeah.
So there you go, I guess. Um, and then we have the Mario M. Cuomo "Dad, Please Love Me" Memorial Station, which is made by Andrew M. Cuomo, the disgraced governor of New York, who is apparently trying to make a political comeback.
Oh, really? Huh.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what he's planning to do, but it probably isn't good. It's like the things our politicians can get away with in this country, honestly.
I think he's basically lost. I think that there's no way New York is
He,
going to
he
elect
didn't
him
he
again.
didn't get in any significant legal trouble. He's just a disgraced politician
Yeah.
for obvious obvious cases of extremely overt and inappropriate sexual harassment, uh corruption, money laundering, and if you look into some of the construction projects he proposed and the costs and how much it should have cost, it reads a lot like Tammany Hall.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, that's the weird part about studying history is it makes so much seem familiar, and that's I think that's been one of the most fun parts of A Push.
yeah, it's a pretty fun class.
Like, it's kind of boring and tedious and takes way too much of my time, but being able to draw the comparison between why can't we progress beyond corruption and crime and war? These are the questions.
Yeah, these are the
But
questions we make this show for.
yes. So intercity light rail is done fairly well in a lot of cities. New York does it kind of well too, I guess. Um, Europe does it really well. The problem is a lot of cities in America are really new. Uh, that's a thing that a lot of people don't understand. Is London, Paris have been population centers for I don't know, 1,000 years or so, and San Francisco really only became a metro center for the last 100 years, and New York at the most has been 300 or 400. It's just these cities are so new that a lot of these deep-seated public transportation initiatives that take decades, if not centuries, to complete just haven't been able to be done yet. Like the
Yeah, there
Paris
simply has
Metro.
not been enough time of development for, these things to be made.
Yeah, absolutely. We talked about that. So then there's intercity rail. This one's interesting. So in the United States, that's done by Amtrak, which is a quasi-private corporation. It receives government funding, but it is expected to turn a profit, which it rarely does. In terms of cost, it is slightly cheaper than flying. A coach seat cross country from Chicago to Seattle is about $150. Flying at the cheapest is about 200 or so. So it's on par, and it takes 2 days. But going off on a quick tangent, flying is such a soulless form of travel.
It
It ta-
always just feels
it
awful.
takes you from the outside of a city to the outside of another city. The whole experience is unpleasant. You're not seeing anything. It makes the entire landscape seem dull, except for the cities you're going in between. But like, look at like the Amtrak pictures. Like, look at that. Like,
Yeah,
that's
I can say
insane. You can like, if you've never been on a cross country Amtrak trip and you have the time, do it. Like it's about the same as flying. You're just going to get there a couple days later. In the future, you will not be able to fly everywhere. I'm sorry, but that's the truth. It's flying is on its way out. It is not sustainable at all. No matter which form flying will take in the future, it will be significantly reduced, probably only used for high priority travel or high priority cargo. it will not be a regular average Joe taking a business trip to Miami for the weekend from Portland. I don't know. It's like flying is not part of our future, but taking the train most definitely is. Um, I've done Chicago to Oakland. I'm doing Chicago to Seattle this summer. It's such an insane way to travel, and you meet the funniest people along the way.
Yeah, I've heard great things about it.
It's really cool. If for no other reason than it's a really cool way to experience America. And America has a lot of really cool things for all of the shit we give it on this podcast. It does a lot of things well, and I
Yeah,
think
I mean, there's
in
just
terms of
so many different people and towns and cultures and ways of life that you do not see traveling 30,000 feet above them.
yeah, and in terms of conservation, America does that really well too. A lot of other countries don't have stuff like this either because they've existed for so long and have been developed for so long that these have no longer been allowed to exist, or they've just destroyed it all, or they just don't have it. And America has been able to do all of those things by emerging so late. And being able to experience it firsthand, like in a train, is amazing. It's the same reason why I would recommend people drive instead of fly.
Yeah.
Because being able to experience the places you're going through, not sitting next to some sweaty guy who's like binge drinking on a plane, and like just being able to see the clouds, it's cool. And just watching terrible movies and like daytime TV on your phone.
Yeah. It's
Anyway,
good stuff.
that's my quick tangent. It's getting more funding, uh, mostly because their operations are more expensive. But the main issues with Amtrak is that A, it owns almost none of its track except the Northeast Corridor, which we'll talk about later. And it's all centered around Chicago, which is an issue because you can almost divide it up into two sections, east of Chicago and west of Chicago. And for the most part, to get from one section to the other, you need to go through Chicago.
Yeah.
So if you want to take a train from Chicago to Oakland, Chicago to Seattle, Chicago to Los Angeles, no problem. You can take the train there. But if you want to take the train from, I don't know, Washington, D.C. to Oakland, you need to take the train to Chicago and maybe spend the night. I don't know when the train schedule happens for either train. Um, or wait a few hours and then take the train to Oakland. There's no way to go between the two. And especially in Appalachia, there's a fair amount of people there, but you wouldn't know that if you just had this map. You'd think that that the only population centers in America were the West Coast, the Northeast, and Chicago.
Yeah.
So that's how it's doing it now. And then there's the Europeans who love to talk about their high-speed rail. Just go on Reddit and look at like Mia European memes. They make me very mad. So, much like the Paris Metro did, it's just a big jumble of lines going between cities, outside of cities, through cities. And it all comes down to geography. Europe is an extremely dense, extremely small, highly developed portion of land where one could never be only a couple hundred miles from the nearest major city. The population centers are very close to each other and they are extremely dense. Compare that to the US, where, okay, you have some places in Texas, some places on the West Coast, but they're separated by hundreds, if not thousands of miles. And what they're separated by is pretty much no people. The only place in America that looks like Europe is the Northeast. And we'll be getting to that next. But in Europe, their ridership is about 200 million people on their high speed rail per year, where in America, Amtrak's total ridership, including high speed and low speed rail, is about 31 million.
To
Because in
say,
America,
yeah, to say
go ahead.
that America could just plop down a high-speed rail system and have the same results as Europe to the same amount of effectiveness as Europe is just not true.
It's ignoring geography.
We're going to have to approach the situation in a different sort of way, and that's going to demand some new thinking. But I mean, it's been demonstrated that people, given the opportunity and given the convenience, will take the train. So I
Yeah,
mean,
because
we just need to.
with current high-speed rail technology, one could not expect to get from Chicago to San Francisco faster than a day. Um, but the problem with America is that it is extremely sparsely populated. Like there may be a lot of us, but we're over a very large area. And the problem is it's not like Russia where you have an extremely populated one side and a negligibly populated other side. There's large population centers scattered throughout almost uniformly. And that's where
Yeah.
things become difficult. Except the Northeast. So the Northeast Corridor is the only place in America where high-speed rail works very, very well. In Europe, the government builds tracks, and then private freight operators or private transportation operators pay to use them. In America, it's the opposite. Freight companies build rail with private capital, and then the government, through Amtrak, pays to use it. It sucks studying the Great Depression because we were so close to nationalizing the railroads. We were so close.
It would have been so good.
It would have been amazing. But here we are, and pretty much the only nationalized railroad in America is the Northeast Corridor. And what you have is 5 population centers: Boston, New York, Philadelphia, Baltimore, and Washington, D.C., separated by a couple hundred miles. And with their high speed trains, you can cover that distance in a few hours, which is the only place in America that's like Europe. And it's also electric.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
Yeah, the Acela you can easily get from Washington, D.C. to New York in rush hour in a few hours, which makes it possible to commute if you're like staying a few days in New York. Like it's very practical. Like I have some friends on the East Coast, and it will literally be, hey, I'm gonna come see you for the weekend. I'm just gonna take the Acela down. And it's like, if I want to go see you in New York, which I'm planning to do this summer, I need to do some huge operation where I fly separately from my parents on our way back from somewhere that gets me to New York. I get to New York, take the train back, stay with my sister's boyfriend somewhere along there for the night. It's just so inconvenient to get to another city as a minor. But as a minor in the Northeast, assuming your parents are okay with it, I guess, you can easily take the train to see people. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
And all of this to say, Amtrak's value isn't given in dollars. It's not a private business, although it likes to behave like one. Although people like to pretend it is one. People don't say the Department of Defense or the Department of Health and Human Services lost $2 trillion this year. It's a public service. It's supposed to lose money. It's not supposed to turn a profit. It's supposed to serve people. And if you look at rural America and you look at how rural America is, you can easily be hours away from the nearest airport. You could easily not have a way to get to the next town, with just save for hours of driving. You could very easily be like Appalachia. There's a reason why Appalachia is as destitute as it is, and much of the American rural West isn't as destitute as Appalachia. A lot of it has to do with the train. They're connected. They have a way to get to major cities easily. They have a way to get to other towns easily. Even if they don't stay there, it's a way for them to grow up. It's a way for them to communicate. It's how the post office in early America helped to connect people, and that's what I think contributed to a lot of the social advancement of the West and why Appalachia hasn't followed suit.
Yeah. I also agree with that, yeah.
Yeah, don't expect public enterprise to turn a profit because it's not supposed to. It's not a sunglass hut. It's not supposed to make money. And I think that's what a lot of people in America need to get over. It's that if we're going to have publicly owned utilities and publicly owned Amtrak or whatever, it can't be expected to turn a profit because it's not supposed to. It's not in the business of exploiting people. It's in the business of helping people.
Yeah,
To
I think
each his own ability, to each according to his need.
that's exactly what it is. It's a public business. Not business. We literally just went over it. It's a public
Business.
service. It serves the public.
There we go.
Nothing else should be asked of it.
It's perfect. Amtrak, you're doing a great job. I'm very excited for this summer. I'm going. I mentioned it before, but I'm going to Seattle. Like,
Oh yeah,
I
good stuff.
thought it's gonna be super cool. I'm gonna sit next to so many crackheads along the way. I'm also taking it alone.
Hmm.
Oh yeah, it's so much fun because you can like chat up someone who's on the no-fly list.
Oh my god.
Yeah, Amtrak's trying really hard to ban people who are on the no-fly list.
That makes
All right.
sense.
Next, we're going to be talking about urbanization. So, part 2 of our good engineering series.
Good
I gotta
stuff.
go. All right, I gotta head out. My shout out goes to the people of Ukraine. You're
Same
doing
here.
great.
Yep.
All right, stay safe, everyone.
This is on your back.
Adios.
The point of contention is how they act. Where you draw the line will set you free. The debate is over.